Tonight, once again, we gather in search of the truth, dark, and mystery. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Brian Christopher Kohberger has been arrested. He was arrested and arraigned this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Brian Kohberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latest gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Philip J. Fry, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the DT Show. I'm Daniel, and today we come tonight with some rather sad news. It appears that our topic of the night, which is the disappearance of Camila Olmos, it appears that her body's been discovered, her remains, and she's no longer with us. May she rest in peace. And we're going to talk about her disappearance, and we're going to talk about the investigation that led up to the discovery of her body. We have a special guest tonight. We have a former FBI agent, Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer. Jen, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Hey, Dan. Thanks so much for having me. Although the circumstances are so tragic and sad.
They very, very much are. You know, I think most of us, obviously everybody was holding out hope that maybe perhaps she just went with a friend, or maybe perhaps, she was cooling off. There was some, happy ending to this. And unfortunately, it does not seem to be the case. I have well, first and foremost, where were you when you heard the news, and how did you take it?
Well, I am in New Mexico, and when I heard the news, I sort of expected it, and I say that because of watching this case so slowly. You could tell by what the sheriff was saying, and then you combine that with the facts that were known in the case, and it seemed clear, but you always hold out hope, and I was holding out some sort of hope.
Yeah, me too as well. You know, the sheriff came out and said that there was he stated suicidal ideations, and that there was a report for endangerment. I mean, they put out a clear report. One of the things that they kind of kept to themselves was that there was a gun missing, and a gun was found near her remains. Do you think that's something that should have been kept secret? Do you think that's something that maybe the public should have been notified about if she is having some sort of, mental health crisis and armed with a weapon? Folks are out there looking for her. What do you think about that aspect of the investigation?
Well, I think as far as letting individuals know that are in the groups that are looking, I think that would have been an important detail. But as far as just a public disclosure for everybody, I don't know if that would have been the right thing to do, but I understand where you're going with it, but I think it was very clear there was no intent to hurt others. It was always about intent to hurt herself.
Right. Exactly. And so we got a article here. I'm going to read through it, and then we'll talk and stop and discuss. It goes on. This article is from San Antonio. This is News 4SA, local to me. I'm from San Antonio, guys. I actually am not far away from where she disappeared. I live a couple of subdivisions away, and I was out there. I went out there a couple of times to see the residents, see the area, and from where they found her body, I was within probably a couple of 100 yards from where she was located. And so pretty crazy stuff, and it's super sad. And I know I reached out to her mom. I had spoken to her once before, and, I gave her my condolences and stuff. And she hasn't reached out. Obviously, she's going through a hard time. but super sad, and it's just an unfortunate outcome. But this goes on to say, San Antonio Bexar County Sheriff's Office has announced that the body, which may be of missing 19-year-old Camila Olmos, has been found. According to investigators, body was discovered by search crews around 4:45 p.m. at a site of Burning Bush Landscaping Company near the corner of Bent Canyon and FM 1560, within a few hundred yards of her home in an area of tall grass. Investigators say that the body was found matched to be Camila's clothing and description, but have not identified the body of Camila Olmos at this point. So her body found so close. I know that there was a lot of questions as far as why there wasn't any surveillance of her walking around outside of this one possible surveillance camera that captured a person walking. Are you surprised that she wasn't too far away? I know they did a search. The sheriff spoke out about how they went through there and they had just been there, didn't see her, came back on a second time, and they found her. Any surprise that it took a second search through the area to find her?
Well, I'm not surprised from the standpoint that these searches are so difficult. They just are. It requires a lot of personnel. You have to walk just feet from one another, and that often can't happen because there's a log there, there's a stream, there's a tree, there's tall grass that you somehow, walk around in a way. And I know she was found in very tall grass, and that grass there in Texas, and I know you know this, I'm a Texas girl, it is extremely difficult to see. It's so obscuring. And so, no, I'm not. Look at Brian Laundrie, 5 weeks, and every law enforcement agency, every contraption that can be used to find a body, he was never found except for by his parents who knew where he was, and many, many other cases. We just had the case where 3 little girls were murdered, and it took them a second go around before they found that body, and he was only a mile from where he murdered his girls. I don't even want to say his name. So my point is it's so difficult.
Yeah. He did mention about the grass, and initially I'm sure they were doing what is called a hasty search, which is where they're going back, they're yelling out for somebody's name in response, in hopes that somebody's going to respond to them and say, "Oh, I'm over here." And so it's not like a grid search where you're looking, you're much closer together. So there's a good possibility that they just walked past her because they were looking for somebody who was alive, and unfortunately she wasn't. We have a comment here from oh gosh, man, my screen is too small for this distance.
We're getting old.
I am. My birthday is actually around the corner. Raymond Light, the healer, 89, says 2 young ladies unalived in that area, and that's true. So the crazy thing about this area is, not too long ago, I want to say earlier this year, there was another young lady who went on a walk, went missing, and she was found a couple of days later with a self-inflicted stab wound to the, I think it was to the chest, and she had taken her life. And this was just in the same subdivision. Just eerie coincidence to you, or do you think that maybe perhaps, I mean, obviously it's just a coincidence it's in the area, but what can folks do if they're having these type of thoughts?
Well, I'm so glad you're bringing this up, because I think we are getting to be, unfortunately, with these young girls. Look at Brianna Aguilera there in Texas as well. And it's just getting to be a situation where I think these girls just, it's just so tragic, where they don't understand that there are other answers, and they just don't, they're hopeless. And that's the thing about people who think about and then tragically decide to commit suicide. It's because they don't have hope, and in a nutshell. And when you look at how these girls died back in the day, and for many, many years, and still, if you look statistically speaking, girls typically do take their life in ways that don't involve mutilation to the body, such as gunshots, stabbing, jumping from balcony, that typically it was always slicing of the wrist or taking a drug, overdosing this. And now
Right.
we're seeing these very violent ways, and it's terrible. It's terrible, Dan. And I think I don't want to call it an epidemic, but we're certainly some.
Yeah, yeah. Jen, you're breaking up a little bit. Uh, yeah, it's coming in kind of broken up a little bit, but I think you're right. You know, based on what we heard there, that this is becoming an epidemic. This has changed before in the past, and one of the things when I was coming into law enforcement that we were told when it came to investigations and stuff like that is that yeah, you know, most of the time females, if they did commit some sort of crime where it was a gunshot or a stabbing, that it wasn't to the face. There was a thing about the thought process of being presentable. And so, uh, you know, which reminds me of this one case that, or this one call that I went to where um, I wasn't too sure that the young lady took her life, but that was what the call was. And we got there, and the detectives had um, made that determination based on, you know, she had taken some, she had made some sort of cocktail out of some chemicals and drank that, but she was in her underwear and she had some presentation. She had this presentation there where she had drank the liquid, and her bedroom was made and stuff like that. So it seemed weird, out of place for her to be in her underwear if everything was like put up nicely. And then the other weird thing was that her husband, they were going through divorce, or they're going through some sort of marriage thing. Now, this was a very long time ago, and he had shown up, and they had been split apart, and there was this fear of him losing his residency, and so her family had thought it was suspicious that he had shown up when he did, because he was supposedly 4 hours away, and he showed up within an hour and a half of her passing, and nobody had told him anything, which I also found was weird. But that's for a story for another time. That was a long time ago too. While we wait for Jen, we have Gene coming in saying, will the family member be in trouble for not having stored the gun in a safe place? No, because in my opinion, Camila she was like 19 years old now. If she was a child, a young child, somebody who was not of, could make, decisions. This is an adult. She made the decision to go in and take the gun. It's a little bit different. If this was a young child, I think then, yeah, there could be some culpability there, but not in this scenario. Let's see. I believe there are some things still not adding up, in my opinion. Yeah. No, I can see where you're at. But I think that, her turning off the phone, her having these suicidal ideations, her, going back to her mom sleeping with her in the bedroom, her mom sleeping with her in the bedroom, I questioned why. Was there something that had happened? Was she not wanting to be alone? I even said maybe she had gone through a breakup, and then we find out like the day or so later that there was a breakup. A lot of people were pointing fingers at the boyfriend because he said I was her boyfriend. Saying, a lot of folks were saying, oh, he's using past tense. I was one of those that said, let's use some patience and figure out what it is that he meant by that first before we accuse somebody and make more victims out of a crime and or out of a situation. And sure enough, we found out that she just had a relationship and she turned her phone off or allowed it to die, left her phone behind, and took a gun with her, which was found with her, where her remains were found. And I just think that all clues are kind of pointing in that direction. Let's see. Who Blueberry? JTX86 says, the one thing I don't understand is when they noticed the firearm was gone and why didn't they report it earlier? Apparently they did. Apparently they did report it right away. Law enforcement did not disclose that. So they were aware that, and I think that was part of the reason why they released the clear report. That's one of the reasons why why I was telling Jen, I was like, you got people going out there looking for her. If she's going through a mental health crisis, her armed with a weapon, unfortunately she took her life there, but that could also be serious or a dangerous situation for somebody who's searching for her to come across her. And I'm not criticizing law enforcement or anything like that, but I think that may have been some information that people should have been aware of. I went out there, and I think it would have been, I think I really would have preferred to have known that she may have been armed. Not saying that would have prevented me from going and looking or things of that nature, but I'm just, when you have somebody going through a mental health crisis, things happen by accident, it doesn't necessarily mean that she may attack somebody, but if she's panicking, stressed out, things of that nature, not trained with handling a weapon, perhaps having her finger on the trigger, an accident, some things can happen. And so you want to make sure that, if you see her, you're approaching with caution, you're not trying to startle her or run up to her, things of that nature, which you don't want to do in general, but you want to know that if you're out there looking. That's basically what I'm trying to say. I'm not sure if Jen's going to be able to make it back or not, so I'm going to continue reading and we're going to continue the show. This goes on to say, new video released by investigators seek clues in the disappearance of Camila Olmos. The body was found in an area of tall grass about 250 yards from the family home. The area, which had previously been marked as having been screened, was swept again by a larger team, including FBI investigators. But as of now, we've are processing the scene, and we're hope to have more information to release soon as we're able. The area in question is probably about, I'd say, as the crow flies, about a quarter mile from here and probably a few hundred yards from her actual residence. So again, not too far away. It most likely was not her on the body cam footage. I mean, not the body cam footage, on the dash cam walking down the street. That's most likely somebody else. Again, it was hard to tell if that person was even her. I know a lot of folks were looking at the photo of the screenshot of the neighbor's camera system that captured Camila, or allegedly possibly Camila, outside of her residence. I had seen some doctored footage that was out there, or pictures out there that made it look like it was a male. That wasn't real. I had been out there a couple of times, and the way that scene is, it is not it was doctored extremely. AI was put in there. Welcome back, Jenna. Can you hear us?
Apologies. I am so sorry.
No problem. I was just kind of filling in time there. And so you were saying, I'd asked a question about an increase. You were talking about an increase in young ladies who have taken their lives in more violent manner, and then you cut off. If you want to continue there.
Yeah, it's just something that I hadn't seen like I'm seeing it now, and I can't wait to see the FBI's statistical analysis. It's always a year behind, but I'm going to be watching it closely. But typically, women take their lives by medication or by slicing their wrist. It's usually not violence, such as gunshots or knives or jumping, because of the self-mutilation that exists when you commit suicide this way. So typically when people do commit suicide or take their lives in these manners, it's because they definitely want to make sure that they are gone. And this I just find so sad. It's so distressing with these beautiful young girls with their whole lives ahead of them. And I think that's why it's so hard to understand,
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And, I think some of her friends were coming around also saying that they had noticed a few things, like when she was planning, I guess, to go dress shopping with her friend referencing her friend's boyfriend's event. She told her bye and I love you, which was something that she normally didn't say. And she said that she felt kind of weird about that. And um, one of the things that the sheriff was mentioning was that even if they all of a sudden seem like they're okay, if you see that they're depressed and all of a sudden that they seem that they're okay, it may be because they've already made the decision to commit a crime. And so that's one of the red flags to keep out, look out for your family members and from your friends. If they're going through a hard time and then all of a sudden just kind of like, okay, um, that might be an indication. And the reason why I bring that up is because her family had come out and spoken that how she was doing okay and she was fine. She seemed okay and she seemed okay recently. And I'm assuming that they found some information off of her tablet, off of her phone, that led them to believe about the suicidal ideation. And I think also the missing handgun was probably another clue there. Um, and it's just unfortunate and so sad, that this happened. And I mean, the effect on the parents, I couldn't imagine what they're going through right now. Oh, Jen's dropped off again. All right, let me continue this. It goes on to say, it's an area very, very close to here. Sheriff Salazar said that the body was found consistent with having been there for 5 or 6 days. The medical examiner will identify the body and determine that the cause of death in the upcoming days. I was out there 3-4 days after her disappearance, maybe. I know the first time that I went out there may have been like a day or two immediately after. So again, I live fairly close. I found out immediately when she was missing. It was in the Facebook community page, and I started seeing her images shared and stuff like that. And we went out there fairly quick, but the first couple of days, I think the first time that I went out there in the first couple of days, it was we just drove by and just kind of drove around the area. Wasn't until here recently, I want to say probably about 4 days ago now, that we went out there, that I got down or walked the area and looked at the area. She wasn't super close because she was about, I think, 250 yards is what it said. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One, where she was kind of located is there's some businesses out there and stuff like that, so there's some loud noises that usually happen. Also, the distance away, plus the houses and how they're built, it's hard to hear things like I know that some people are going to say, well, how did people not in that area not hear the gunshot? It apparently was 250 yards away, in an area where there's some businesses that, deal with loud noises. And so I wonder if, I know they were closed that day because of Christmas Eve and things of that nature, but people become deaf to noise like that if it's constant. So just unfortunate. I know I see some folks that have said that, they think that there's still some suspiciousness to this. I don't know. Let's go on to read this. It goes, investigators say a firearm, which investigators have been searching for in connection with her death, had been found near the body. There was a firearm missing in the case. We had not parted with that information publicly just yet, but I can tell you that there's been a video of a firearm recovered at the scene where the body of the missing is missing from the home. The firearm that was missing did belong to a relative. Related FBI joins the search. Missing teen Camila Olmos, mental health possible concerns. Sheriff Javier Salazar said also that Camila had been dealing with mental health struggles, including issues with school and home life, as well as a recent breakup. During the course of the investigation, we developed some information that there had been some suicidal ideations on Camila's part before, some signs of depressions undiagnosed as far as we can tell, said Sheriff Salazar. But from what is being described to us, it sounds like she was a young person going through a very tough time in her life and going through some emotional issues. And there were some indicators of suicidal ideation as well. Texas DPS has announced that the clear alert issued for Camila Olmos has now been discontinued, although the search has concluded for Camila for the time being. The 14-year-old Sofia Gabriela Peters Cobos has reportedly been found safe. And that was another little girl that was missing in the area. A lot of folks were thinking that maybe perhaps there was some sort of connection here. Maybe perhaps they were both abducted. Not to be the case. Completely separate scenarios. San Antonio's fairly large. Unfortunately, some kids, run away and things like that. And it happens so often. You see these reports. This one stuck out just because her phone was left behind and she went for a walk, and it really did seem like there could be something really, really dangerous afoot here. And not saying that there wasn't, but I think a lot of people were starting to think maybe perhaps she was taken on her walk, trafficked of some sort. And, it was getting to the point where it was, I think people may have thought it was a possibility. Now, law enforcement brought in cadaver dogs and searched the area, and they didn't catch this. So, that's the other thing too, right? So, I know there's some other cases where we've looked at and we talked about some missing persons, and where they brought in cadaver dogs and they brought in search dogs, and they not find anything. And folks, automatically assume that there was nothing there. This is a good indication to show that they brought in cadaver dogs, they brought in search and rescue, and she was only a couple of 100 yards away, and the area wasn't, it was tall grass. So some of these other areas that are more densely populated, like the woods in Nova Scotia for the Jack and Lily Sullivan disappearance, or, like in that case where I strongly suspect that those little kids are out there missing in the woods. But I digress. Let's see. This goes on to say that the Barrett County Sheriff's Office is still searching for 17-year-old Angelique Johnson. As a search for 19-year-old Camila Olmos entered its 6th day, search efforts on the ground intensified with a new search teams from the nonprofit Texas EquiSearch joining the search efforts. The search focused in the Wild Horse neighborhood near Loop 1604 and Braun Road, where Olmos was last seen. Her father, Alfonso Mendoza, expressed doubt about a dash cam video released by the sheriff's office, which they believe shows Camila on the day she disappeared. Oh, it isn't her. She's a thin young lady, 110 pounds, and that dash cam looks like a heavier person, Mendoza said. Obviously, it's not her. I couldn't tell. It looked that dash cam was very hard to tell if that was even a male or female. Similar but the area also at that time, you would expect some folks to be walking, so it's not uncommon to see that. Folks walking in the area. Tim Miller from Texas EquiSearch stated, we wanted to make sure we have resources that would be available. Early on, we were going to look around and hold on to hope that she's alive out there somewhere. Volunteers, including Frank Trevino, are working tirelessly to find any clue to Camila's whereabouts. There's no clues whatsoever where she could be. Trevino said Camila's family was frustrated by the lack of answers before the discovery of the body. You kid's father, listen, I never wish this upon anybody. I'm experiencing this. I don't wish this situation on anybody. My heart's broken, said Mendoza, and that's the father who said that. It's just heartbreaking. I couldn't imagine what he's going through. It's so sad. You hug your kids and make sure they're safe and lock your doors and things of that nature, because you don't want to be in his shoes. Family, friends intensified the search for the 19-year-old last seen on Christmas. Community rallies to find the missing teen, last seen near her home. Let's see. This is kind of some old stuff, but at the end, it does say authorities urge anyone with information to contact Barrett County Sheriff's Office if you or anyone you know has been struggling with thoughts of self-harm or suicide. please call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. Just so unfortunate. She was so young. She had so much in front of her. I understand that life gets hard and things like that. And if you're thinking about doing something like this, reach out, especially call the Lifeline. I know she was going through a lot, and now her parents are really probably feeling it. And so just poor, sad situation all the way around. Wish it was different. Put a couple stars in the comments in the question. Put your questions in the comment section. Let me know that you want to talk to me. If you're asking me a question or a comment that you want me to review, put it in the comment section. Put a couple stars there. If not, that way that tells me you're talking to me and not to each other. I know there's a lot of conversations there. Let's see. I'm going to go up a couple of comments and then read down. Let's see. Not how old her brother is. Yeah, that's what I heard, that it was the brother's handgun. No disrespect, but if a cat or dog passes away, you can smell them, and that body has a big smell. I've been to Iraq, and trust me, it has an awful smell. I've been around a deceased body. I know what it smells like as well. Former law enforcement, former military as well. But 250 yards away, I mean, I was out there. I didn't smell anything. Hey, welcome back, Jen. I hope everything's okay.
Well, everything is fine. Deepest apologies to you. I am so sorry. As you know, this hasn't happened before, but I'm having some connection issues. But anyway, back to the subject at hand. I heard you discussing, odor, and when it's outdoors, and then also depending on how far away you are, downwind, upwind, and the amount of time that body has been deceased, you're not going to smell.
Yeah.
Will necessarily smell a body depending on when they passed.
Yeah. No, yeah, I know. I was out there. I was walking around. I couldn't smell anything, but I'll be honest. I really never gone to like an area and try to videotape things. So I felt weird, walking around with my phone. I was trying to not make myself known. So I was just, I recorded the area as quickly as I could. And probably should have spent a little bit more time there. I had actually seen the opening where she would have had to have walked to have gotten to where she was. I probably would have not gone and checked it for two reasons, or for one reason, mainly the camera that was next door. I felt that it picked her up walking towards her car, that if she was walking back towards that opening in that area, she would have had to have walked towards that camera, that camera's motion detector would have captured that. If it caught her walking towards the car, it would have caught her walking back, and it didn't. So I was kind of, pushed back by that, that was the area. But is what it is. And I guess it makes more sense why there's not any other cameras in the neighborhood that picked her up walking that morning. And so, we kind of read through this, and it really didn't have much more. Just kind of talked about how everything was consistent with her and it being her, and the weapon. They're going to be checking the serial numbers
from the raw footage we saw.
What's that? I'm sorry, you were breaking up a little bit.
You there, Dan?
I am here. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can hear you, but I'm not sure you can hear me.
I can hear you now. A minute ago, I couldn't. And so, but I can hear you now. What were your thoughts there?
No, I was just saying that entire camera footage, both camera footage, I think was confusing to the public generally. From what we were seeing, it really looked like a man. It didn't look like somebody in blue PJs on their bottom half, and it didn't look like a feminine type silhouette or picture there. But whenever law enforcement comes out and unequivocally tells us that this is her, we have to believe that, even though I think sometimes this footage, it can be deceiving to the eye.
Yeah, it definitely can. And I know that there was some footage that was being doctored and AI was making it look like there was somebody like in like baggy clothes. But the street looked weird. Like it didn't look like the street that was there. It had like, and I think the truck that was parked next to it was like cut in half. And so I'm pretty sure it was AI had a lot to do with it. But yeah, the footage that was out was super grainy. The footage that they had of the person walking down the street, I don't believe that was Camila. Obviously, now I think she walked straight past, the house, then walked back there and committed. She did what she did. And so the person that was walking down the street that they captured, I don't think that was her. But you can't tell. I mean, I think I put it out there. I think I've seen better Bigfoot videos that are clearer than that. And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's so true.
but sad case, unfortunate. I feel bad for her family. I pray for them. I pray for her ex-boyfriend. I can't imagine what he's going through. They just went through a romantic breakup and now, this has happened. He's out there searching. He's also had some people point some fingers at him, and I feel bad for him. I hope he's doing okay.
Yeah, it's been disappointing to see that on social media. I've seen a lot of it on X, even in my feed and on my platform, to see people say that and speculate when there's not one shred of evidence. And in fact, the sheriff made it very clear that he was cooperative, and there was no sign of him being involved in any way. And I still see people saying that.
Yeah, it's crazy, and a lot of people were asking me like why I was giving him grace, I guess. And I was like, hey, I choose patience in a situation like this. If he truly had something to do with something like this, I'll say this: that area where she disappeared from, it's very close again, where a couple of subdivisions away from where I live. There are cameras like crazy from here to there and all around there. And so not only does he have to take her without being seen on camera, he has to leave his subdivision, enter her subdivision, get out of their subdivision, and go back to his subdivision without being seen, without any type of digital footprint or anything like that. And to me, had he had something to do with anything, it'd be very easy for law enforcement to figure that out.
I 100% agree. And typically when law enforcement comes out early and basically says they are not a person of interest and we're not looking in that direction, it's because that person has an alibi and they've been able to clearly establish that. So even though law enforcement didn't come out and say that, just from being in law enforcement all these years and having cases, I know that that's the facts. That's why they weren't looking at his direction. And if they were looking at him, they would have been much more unclear. They would have kept it very general, but they were very specific that they did not believe he was involved.
Yeah, very much so. Tall Red TX says, did you hear about the 15-year-old in Houston who was abducted? The dad was able to track her down by her phone and rescued her. I actually did. That's a horrific situation. There was that one. I think there was another person who was trying to kidnap some other folks and got tracked down by two fathers and beaten up. Those kind of stories, and then something like, Camila goes and disappears, makes it so much reason why it's so easy to believe that maybe perhaps something extremely nefarious had occurred. Did you hear about this scenario that Tall Red TX is talking about, that case?
Oh, yeah, I did. I featured it on X right when it happened. I recall, I think the perpetrator's first name was Giovanni, as I recall. And yes, I heard all about that. We talked a lot about it on News Nation because it was really a case where, but for that father making the decision to track that phone and to see that it was in the woods and become so concerned that he went out there. But for that happening, we don't know what would have happened to her. They haven't said her name yet, so we don't have a name. We just call her the 15-year-old. But I mean, geez, Dan, you never know what could have happened. So I was just so glad that the father took those, even though it was kind of dangerous, but of course he wouldn't know particularly why she was in the woods. The last thought he probably had was that she was kidnapped, but instinctually he went out there and he saved her life probably.
Oh, 100%. I 100% agree. And, there's some sickos out there. That's why you got to stay vigilant, and you have to, keep your eyes open and make sure that you lock up, because, the one night you don't, you'll end up you could end up being a victim of something very horrific. Jen, any final words, for you and anything you want to say for everybody and what you have going on next?
Well, just a couple of things back really quickly on this kidnapping that we just touched on. It's just so important that if you're a young lady or a young man, you really need to have that pepper spray out if you're going to be by yourself walking. And depending on what kind of dog, if it's not a big Rottweiler or a German Shepherd, I don't know whether she was walking a poodle or what, but, it can be very dangerous. And so it just takes nothing to have that in your hand and on the ready. So I really always recommend that. I just wanted to touch on that for people listening. And as far as what I have coming up, the big thing, and this is 6 weeks away, but I'm very excited to have a world-renowned AI specialist that was with the FBI and forensic digital analyst who was actually in the behavioral analysis unit of the FBI. He's going to be joining us. I'm very excited about that. And then I'm working on Tim Tebow, but I have not gotten any confirmation yet. So still working him. He's got a pretty big schedule, but I'm hoping to have him on in regard to what he's doing to help children who are abducted. It's really incredible.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about you working to get Tebow on your show. That'll be amazing. That'll be amazing. And to your point about getting the pepper spray and stuff, out there in Houston, I think they pulled 34 bodies out of the water there. Out there in Austin and Lady Bird Lake, there's been 20 something bodies pulled out of that lake. Law enforcement in both scenarios say that they don't believe that there's some sort of serial killer out there, that they may be alcohol related, they may be this, they may be that. But, when you have that many bodies coming out of a lake and out of the water, doing your due diligence and making sure that you're protected, what does it hurt? You know what I mean? And so make sure you go and do that. Make sure you're safe.
Exactly right. And Amber Alerts. Why is there an Amber Alert? It's because of a stranger abduction and, kidnapping and murder. And that's why, we have that alert in place, because they happen. Stranger abductions do happen. And it's just, if people can be very vigilant when they're out by themselves, and I think it can help protect them against being kidnapped. But they do happen. And I understand why people are, more concerned now, especially seeing so many happen there in Texas at that time frame, why so many people thought that could have been what happened to Camila.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, guys, I'm going to be back on maybe tomorrow. I'm not sure yet. I know it's New Year's Eve tomorrow night. So I might be back on. I'm not sure. But on Thursday night, on New Year's Eve, myself, Dr. Vona, and Ryan and Jen from Ryan Finds Truth, we're going to be talking about the Summer Wells case. We're going to be looking at a couple of interviews. Dr. Vona is a doctor in psychology and a professor at a university. So we're going to be looking at some interviews from, I believe, Candace and Dawn, and try to, kind of pick her brain about what she sees. So make sure you guys go and check that out. One last thing. Gene asks, Jen, what is your Twitter handle? I know I have it in the description, but for everybody that's just listening, let them know what it is.
Yeah, it's at Coffindaffer FBI. And I have to say, I'm so much more active on Twitter. I'm every day on there, and multiple times a day because it's so much easier for me to get messaging out. My YouTube, I'm not doing as well because I am working so much, and then also a lot of family things going on this time of the year with finally my kids being home from college. So it's great to have them. And so anyway, yes, thank you for asking. And I hope you know, if you like, might take a look and follow if you like what you see.
Yes, go check her out. Great stuff. She's putting out quite a bit of stuff. That's when I get some of the information. Get up the updates is when I see it on Jen's Twitter. So make sure you go and check that out. Guys, I want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I'll be back on probably tomorrow night. Not sure what I'm going to be talking about, but we'll be back then. Until then, guys, be safe. Have a happy New Year. I'll see you guys no later than Thursday. Have a good night. Peace out, everybody.